All right, great. Well, my name is Sarah Smith, and I've been here for a few other topics for Pop Knowledge. Today, though, I'm really excited to talk to you about ice fishing and ice safety because I really enjoy ice fishing and I really enjoy recreating safely in the winter. And so even if you're not interested in ice fishing, the ice safety portion of this should be pretty relevant if you want to get out and do any kinds of fun things this winter outside, ice skating, or even just walking your dog on a frozen lake or snowshoeing on a lake, things like that. So I'm going to hit admit for Maria, just so she.
Okay, thank you. I'm not paying attention.
That's okay. Hi, Maria. Oh, she's just getting connected. We'll just talk about ice fishing and ice safety. And if you have any questions, you can ask me at the end. I'm not sure if you have any experience ice fishing. Is it okay to ask that right now, Michelle?
I do not. It is not
Okay.
something that appeals to me because it's scary, but you're going to teach us why it shouldn't be scary.
Yes. Yeah. And a healthy fear is always a good thing. Maria, do you have any ice fishing?
No, not me.
Okay. How about Dave?
How about you, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. So this might be repetitive for you, Dave, but maybe you can share some tips with me at the end. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in here. So we'll talk about ice safety first. But first of all, people again are like, why would I go sit out on a frozen lake in the winter on a sheet of ice to catch a fish? And it's a great question. I think it's a really fun way to catch fish. It's very different than what you're doing in the summer. I think it's pretty easy and uncomplicated to learn. We take hundreds and hundreds of kids out in the winter, and within like 30 minutes, we have them catching perch. So it's something that is pretty easy and uncomplicated. People can start it pretty quickly and be successful. And I think if you want to really enjoy fishing and keep going, catching fish is always a good reason to keep doing it. When you're not catching fish, it can be something they're like, why am I doing this? But it can be pretty inexpensive, just like any other outdoor recreation activity. You can spend a lot of money doing it, but you can also keep it pretty inexpensive. And it's just a really good way to spend time outdoors in the winter. I know it can get pretty hard in Montana. We have those long, cold, dark nights, snow everywhere. But this is a really fun way to get outside. And as you can see in this picture, most days are just so brilliantly beautiful when you're out ice fishing. It's cold, but it's just gorgeous. So it's a really good way to get outside, and pulling a sled is great exercise. I will tell you that. So if you want to work out and you want to have some fun and possibly catch dinner, ice fishing is a pretty awesome thing to do. So to talk about ice safety, it's usually, the biggest thing I hear from people, just like one of you said, that it doesn't appeal to you because it seems scary. And it can be scary, but just like anything else, if you prepare, if you do your homework, if you do things the right way, it doesn't have to be scary. It can be really safe and fun. And this is an infographic that one of our people came up with, but these guidelines are pretty universal in the ice fishing community. 4 inches of ice, you can go out and ice fish. I personally like 6 or 7 inches of ice. That's my personal, what I feel comfortable on when I'm out with my sled and my gear. And so these are recommendations. These are by no means, oh, there's 4 inches of ice, I'm going to go out and be fine. We'll talk a little bit more about what makes ice safe and unsafe here in a minute, but these are some of the inches. We won't take kids out usually unless we have a foot of ice, just because we have so many of them at one time and we don't want them to all congregate in one place. So we like to spread them out. We like to have more ice. You'll see like 10, 11, 12 inches. I would never recommend driving on the ice, but people do it. People especially like out east, they have ice fishing villages. They have trailers on the ice. They've got saunas, they've got bars, like all kinds of towns basically pop up on the ice out there, but they have a lot of ice. They have really cold winters and they have a lot of ice. So even though this says you can take ATVs and cars, and people do it, I just I never recommend doing that. So I feel like I hear something every year of a car going through the ice. So I just don't recommend it. But again, this is just kind of a helpful infographic for folks to look at ice thickness. And so, okay, we say, all right, 5 inches of ice, how do we know? And so the first thing that I always do is I start on shore before I even step foot on the ice. I look at the shore, or I stand on the shore and I look out and I say, okay, is there any open water? Because that's a huge indicator that you probably don't have very safe ice. If there's any open pockets of water, if there's water in the shore, you'll see some pictures here in a little bit. Sometimes at the end of the season, it starts melting on shore, but the ice is still pretty thick out in the middle of the lake, and people will go to amazing lengths to try to get to it. Again, I don't think that's safe. I wouldn't personally do that. But I like to measure as I go. So I will start at the shore and I will start going out with my auger, and we'll talk about augers here in a little bit. And I'll just drill a hole every couple of feet and measure. And I have a ruler just like this. It's like a yardstick, and a friend put a bolt through the end of it so I can hook it under the lip of the ice. You guys can see the different layers of ice there, so that I can get a measurement of exactly how thick the ice is. It looks like about 11 inches there. So I would feel really good on that ice. But I will go measure holes all the way out, especially if there aren't that many people out on the lake ahead of me. And I will also put a bunch of holes, not right around me. I wouldn't stand in the middle and drill a bunch of holes around me like a cartoon character. But I like to put a few holes in different places where I know I'll be fishing, just to make sure the ice isn't varying because of something that I'm not aware of. I want to make sure it's the same wherever I'm going to be in that area, so that I don't step to the left 2 feet and go through. So I do a lot of prep. I drill a lot of holes and measure to make sure that the ice is safe before I even start fishing. So I work at Montana Wild, which is the building in the background, and every year we see stuff like this. They took a raft just in case they fall through. There's open water in the middle of Spring Meadow Lake, and they are ice fishing on the ice just off the shore. So this is one of those ones where, hey, don't do it. Please don't do it. We usually have our fingers ready to dial 911 when we see stuff like this, because we think they're going to go through. Thankfully, I haven't had to call 911, but this is one of those crazy examples of what people will go to get out to the ice to ice fish, but please don't do this. So there's a few other factors that can influence how safe ice is. And so again, we talked about measuring the ice, how thick it is. So shallow water versus deep water, though the depths of the ice can be different. So that's something that you want to consider. Still water versus a current. I would never go on river ice. If there's moving water and it's frozen over, you just don't know what that current is doing underneath the ice. And it could be really thin in certain parts and really thick in other parts. But I will not go on river ice. We had someone drowned a winter or two ago, walking their dog on the river, frozen river. Dog fell through. They tried to rescue the dog. They fell through and actually drowned. So anything with a current, I won't go on. If there's a lot of wind, like today's a great example of, a 60 some degree wind, in the spring, or when we get kind of that chinook, that can really take down ice quickly. So if you're going to have some warm wind for a few days, the ice is probably not going to be great. First ice is usually better than ice that's been refreezing. So if we have warmer days kind of towards the end of the season, and then it's freezing at night, and then it's freezing or melting during the day, you kind of get really cloudy, icky ice that's just not super safe. And then springs, like natural springs. And again, Spring Meadow Lake is a great example of this. This is a picture of Spring Meadow Lake where we've got ice on most of it, but because it's a natural fed spring lake, we get these holes where this water is warmer coming in. And so that's definitely an area that you'd want to stay away from. And lots of people ice fish at Spring Meadow Lake. So we try to keep them down on the other end of the lake. So these are some other warning signs to watch for. So again, if you're paying attention, you're going to know if it's going to be safe just from the shoreline, you're probably going to be able to make a decision for yourself. But seeing any kind of standing water on top of the ice, I won't go on. Again, any kind of open water or pockmarked ice like this that you see in the picture, you can see someone is ice fishing out there in the distance. But personally, I wouldn't go on ice with any of those indicators. And I always, say don't be the first one out on the ice. There's always going to be someone who's the first one out, but it's not worth it to me to be the first one out on the ice. So, and I just mean, in places that get fished heavily every day, you might be the first one out on the ice that morning. But if you roll up to somewhere, you don't see anyone around, you don't see trails, sled trails or things like that, I'm not going to be the first one to go out. I've even sent coworkers out before. I'm like, I'll come behind you. You go right ahead. But I won't be the first one out on the ice. So here's an example of that ice melting at the shore, and somebody drove out there, got themselves stuck because they're trying to get out to the thicker ice out in the middle of the lake when everything's melting at the shore. And so you will see this a lot. People will bring planks or wood or other kinds of things to try to jump those gaps. But again, I don't think it's worth it at that point. I've been ice fishing long enough that I don't need to get into situations like this. This is another one trying to bring an ATV in, and the shore ice is just melting a lot quicker because it's not as deep, more sun hitting it, things like that, where they've gone completely through. So I don't recommend, again, driving on the ice, especially towards the end of the season or if it's been pretty warm. So really just if in doubt, stay off. Your instincts are going to keep you safe usually. Like this, I wouldn't go out with this kind of ridge up along the bank here of open water. Some people, again, might try to take a plank, jump over it, go out, but a fish isn't worth it to me. So again, just if you get somewhere and you're looking at it, you're just thinking this doesn't look safe, it probably isn't. So just stay off of it. So I don't know if you, Maria or Michelle, if you've ever been out on the ice and heard the noises that it makes, and it's kind of scary, right? Another reason you're like, oh, it's all going to crack under my feet and I'm going to die. It can be super spooky, but it's totally normal. And so we always talk about, why does the ice crackle and pop the way it does? And if you think about it, it'll get warmer during the day, colder at night, and lake ice is always kind of expanding and contracting and forming and thickening and thinning and all these things. And so whenever we have that happening, it starts making those cracking and popping noises. And sometimes it'll even have cracks run right under your feet, even when you have 10, 15, 20 inches of ice. So again, it's totally safe. You've done your homework, you've drilled your holes, you've measured, but it can be a little unnerving when you start having cracks running across and hearing that cracking and popping and things, but it's totally normal. It's just what ice does. Doesn't mean you're in any danger, that it's not safe, but it is something that you have to get used to if you're going to be out on the ice a lot, because it can send people running if they're not used to it, for sure. This is a pressure ridge, and we get these at the Helena regulating reservoir sometimes. They're pretty common, but basically you're kind of getting some ice pushing up against itself. And so you might have open water, so you can see where they tried to drive across the pressure ridge, and then there was open water and they went right in it. So again, some people will try to hop a pressure ridge if it's not very big, but I stay clear of them. Go around to the other side of the lake if you want to fish the other side, but don't mess with pressure ridges because they are not safe. So this is just a interactive question. Just by looking at this picture, do you think it's safe? Yeah.
They are kind of spread out, so that makes sense from what you said. It still gives me anxiety just looking at this picture.
Yeah. So if I came up to somewhere and I was like, okay, they've got a bunch of kids out there, they've got holes drilled all over the place, I'm going to think this is probably pretty safe. I will say ice is never 100% safe. So even you know, if you do all the things right, you know, you just have to, again, have that healthy fear and respect of ice. But I would think, yes, I'm going out here and I'm going to fish, you know, give them some space and fish, because there's a lot of people out there. I see where people have been fishing previously, tons of tracks, and with a bunch of kids out there, it should be pretty safe, or I would guess they wouldn't have the kids out there, versus this. Do we know if it's safe just by looking at it?
You really can't even tell that that's ice just looking at it.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, this is one where I'd walk up to it and say, I don't see any tracks. I don't see a sign that anyone else has been here. What's interesting, this is a picture, I forget which water body it is out east, but I guess there was like 25 inches of ice or something. So it was very safe, but I personally wouldn't be the first one out there to find that out. So just looking at it, not knowing what's under the snow, that's the other thing that's difficult if you're on a shoreline and there's a bunch of snow on top of the ice, not knowing what's under that snow until you start drilling holes. So not making any assumptions just because there's snow on top of it that there's good ice underneath. But again, this is one where I'd say, I think I'll go somewhere else and find a place that I know people have been fishing. So again, you can't always tell just by looking at it. Sometimes you have to start drilling holes and going along. And I have safety gear with me too that I'll talk about when the ice fishing portion. So again, prep yourself, do your homework with the ice, but then I've got safety gear with me too, just in case something happens that I'm not expecting. So yeah, that's kind of what I have for ice safety. Again, just using your common sense and not going super early and super late in the year is usually pretty good to keep you safe. But now we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about ice fishing gear and what you kind of need. And so you can see the picture on the right, they have a handheld auger, which can totally do the job, really inexpensive. It'll give you a good workout. You're literally just drilling yourself through the ice. And when you get places that have like 20 inches of ice, you're probably never going to do it with a hand auger. But totally you can do it, and it's cheap and easy. On the other side, this is kind of what we use with our programs. It's actually an auger attached to a handheld drill. So it's pretty inexpensive. You just charge the drill of the battery. It's really lightweight. So all the women's classes I do, we like to use them because they can handle them without any problems. They don't need to be packing like a 60-pound gas-powered auger. They do have electric augers, gas augers, things like that. But if you're going to seriously ice fish, investing in an auger is a really good idea. If you don't have one and you can't invest in one, I always tell people to just go out and see if someone will punch a hole for you. Usually if you go up to somebody and say, oh, that's a really cool auger, can you show me how it works? Like, they want to show off their stuff. So they will punch holes for you and tell you way more than you wanted to know about it. Ice fishing folk are pretty friendly crew in general. So, or just go out after people are done using holes. If they haven't frozen over, you can go fish in those. That's totally fine. So you can even ice fish without an auger, but it really does make life a lot simpler. And then again, I really like the light ones, and you can still drill a ton of holes with that little drill battery. It's pretty amazing how many holes we drill with those kids every day, just on one drill battery. So lots of different options out there for augers. With ice fishing, you use a very short rod. It's not like a normal fishing pole that's a lot longer. So you can kind of see in these pictures, they're pretty short. You can even get a little rod holder if you want. I'm usually too impatient to sit and put mine in a rod holder. I like to be moving around with it and things. We use pretty small hooks and lures. And again, that's kind of what we use when we're fishing for perch or some other things around Helena. There's tons and tons of stuff out there you can use to ice fish, different hookups and jigs and lures and all the terminology that goes along with fishing. And we use maggots usually for our bait. It works really well on these little jigs that you can see in the picture there. People use worms, power bait, corn, fish eggs, all kinds of different things. Again, some people have things that they swear by. Other people kind of try different things. At least around Helena here, these little Haley jigs, I think it's H-A-L-I, work pretty well with a little hook and chain and a maggot. Usually you'll get the job done. A sled is a really good thing to have. I like to put all my gear in my sled. It fits in the back of my little CRV with my auger and my poles and all my safety stuff. And then you can pull it out on the ice and have all your stuff together. A shelter makes it a lot more fun. You don't have to have one, but if you get an ice fishing shelter like this and a little propane buddy heater, you don't even have to wear a coat in there. It's so warm and comfortable. So for anyone that hates being cold, an ice fishing shelter is a really good thing to have. And again, they come in a ton of varieties. You can get the ones that you pull out on a sled and they pop up. You can get great big ones like this that kind of fold out and you have to drill anchors into the ice and things like that. So you don't get to move around as much if you have a shelter usually, because it takes a little bit more to get it all set up. But once you're inside, you can put your sled inside in case it snows. Have snacks, have a heater, and it's just a party at that point. So a lot of people like having a shelter if they're gonna fish a lot. Some other things I always recommend, some kind of seat. A lot of people just sit on a bucket. It's cheap, easy. I'm usually kneeling trying to catch fish. So I always bring a bucket and then I never sit on it. Cleats are a must. So those are what are strapped to his boots. So just kind of like you've seen yak tracks, if you're going to be walking out on the ice and snow, just walking on dirt, getting cleats for your boots on the ice is going to save you a lot of headache because it's just going to, cramp into the ice and give you a lot better traction than if you didn't have anything. And they make some really aggressive cleats for ice fishing, like spikes that you can wear on your boots, just to make sure that you're not slipping and sliding everywhere. If there's a little snow on the ice, that helps a lot, really helps your traction, but I would definitely invest in some heavy cleats if you're going to be out ice fishing a lot. And then I always tell people there's no reason you can't wear a life jacket. If you want to feel extra safe out there, he's got a life jacket on. I always have one in my sled too, in case I see somebody that might need it or has gone through. If I need to throw them a life jacket, I've got an extra one in there, but we'll also talk about some specialized life jackets here in a minute that are also kind of part of my safety gear. So this is where ice fishing gets expensive. You can get electronics, which are basically, people call them fish finders. And it's basically sonar so that you can put this down in the ice and you can see at what depth the fish are. So if you think about it, different fish live at different depths. And so if we want to know where to have our bait so that we have a better opportunity of catching a fish, these will tell us that. Usually we know perch are going to be on the bottom, so we can put our bait all the way to the bottom, probably get some perch. But out at the regulating reservoir, which is where we take a lot of people fishing, there are kokanee salmon. And they swim around in groups and they can be anywhere in depth. And so you can hear people get really excited when they see groups coming through on their electronics and they're like, oh, bring it up, put it down, bring it up, put it down, so that they know where to put their bait so it's in front of the fish and hopefully they can catch one. So these are not cheap. If you're really going to invest, maybe ask for this for Christmas or something, because they're expensive, but they're really awesome and they really do help make your fishing more successful, I think. So other gear and safety. So, obviously warm clothes, you're out sitting on the ice, you want to layer up hand warmers, foot warmers, things like that. So the float coat or flotation bibs, those are kind of those specialized life jackets. A float coat is actually a life jacket, but it is a coat. You wear it. It has built-in flotation. It's US Coast Guard approved. You can get them in different colors and camo and things. Super warm, built-in inflation. People, I know people who just like to go walking their dogs in the winter across, lakes and things, will wear a float coat just to feel better about being on the ice, or flotation bibs, which I have, which is just a set of like snow pants, bibs that have flotation built throughout the entire thing. So they're super warm. I never get cold in them. And I know that I have flotation built into the entire thing on my body. So it's a good feeling. A shovel is useful if you want to clear the area of snow and slush. After you use your auger and punch your hole, you're going to have to get some slush and ice out of it. Ice picks, I had a pair, I gave them to a friend, but basically ice picks are, you hold them in each hand and they have a little spike on the end, and I wear them around my neck. They're a safety item. So if I did fall through and I couldn't, get any traction on the ice with my hands, I'd use my picks and I'd dig into the ice and I'd pull myself out of the ice or onto sturdier ice so that I could get out of the water. So ice picks are a really good safety item to have. I usually also have rope with me. Again, if I see somebody that needs help, I could throw the rope to them and try to pull them to me instead of me trying to go to them. And obviously, they fell through, so I don't want to get too close. Hot drinks just make things more fun if you're out there having hot coffee or hot chocolate or whatever. Hand warmers are great. Stick them in your gloves or your coat pockets. A blanket, there's no reason you can't bring a blanket out and stay nice and warm and toasty. A partner, I always recommend taking someone with you. That's with any recreation in Montana. Having another person with you just makes things safer, I think. And always letting somebody know where you're going, when you're coming back, and when to start looking for you if you're not back. So a friend, an ice fishing buddy is always a good thing to take. Okay, so let's talk about some of the fish. And these are specifically a few around here that we fish for. Does anyone know what kind of fish this is? Any guesses? I bet Dave knows.
No, I don't.
No, this is the perch.
Yes, perch.
Yeah, this is a perch. And
Yeah, the perch I've seen has just been a little bit bigger, a little bit rounder and stuff on it. Plus, they're so doggone small. I don't like fooling with them and stuff.
Yeah, so perch can be pretty little or pretty big. This is a teeny tiny one. Usually with the kids, we can catch anything from this small up out at the Helena Regulating Reservoir. That's where we take them. But perch are kind of fun because you get a lot of action, even though if you're going to keep them and eat them, if you don't want to keep all the tiny small ones and try to like prep those and take care of them. But just to catch, especially when we're teaching people, it's great because you get a lot of action. You usually don't get skunked if you're trying to fish for perch. It can happen, but these have a super spiny dorsal fin here, which you can't see right now, but you have to be a little careful on the way you handle them because they're spiky. But if you have gloves on or something, it's not a big deal. But a lot of people love to catch perch. Just like with any fishing, you'd want to look at our Montana fishing regulations and see, how many of these you could keep in certain places. I think in most places it's like 50 or something. You can keep a lot of perch, again, because they're so small. You need quite a few of them to make a meal. But as always, double check wherever you're going to make sure if you're keeping fish or you're not putting in too many lines, things like that. Check out those fishing regulations. And then we've got the lovely trout, which are super fun to catch. Out at Gates of the Mountains last year, I believe, we were catching huge trout right off the bank. It was unbelievable, the size of these fish. So we're really lucky in Helena. We've got a lot of really great ice fishing around here. Pike, this is not something that I don't think we can catch around here. This is out east somewhere, but you can catch some crazy big pike ice fishing. Can you imagine pulling that out of a hole? It's pretty crazy. These are bass that we catch at Frenchtown Pond over in Missoula. We have a women's class over there, and they're really fun to catch through the ice. Again, it's they fight really well, and they're cool fish to catch through the ice. And again, a little more substantial than perch. You can't keep these over there though, so for the regulations, you have to put these back. And then these are some of the kokanee salmon out at the Regulating Reservoir. People go out there and try to target these because they're delicious. They're fun to catch. Again, they're a little trickier especially if you don't have electronics, because you just don't know where they're cruising through out there at what depth. But again, we just use the little Haley jigs with the maggots on them, and it works pretty good to catch these or the perch. But yeah, these are really fun to go out there and fish for. There is a limit on these. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but just a few of the species that you could catch even just right around Helena. So some variety for your ice fishing. So that's all I had for my PowerPoint. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them, or just ice fishing stories. I know you.
I would think that people would be kind of territorial over their fishing hole that they drilled.
They can be a little bit, but it's a pretty friendly group, I think, in general. I mean, if you go over and ask people, what are you using? What are you catching them on? Usually they're going to tell you. People definitely will try to get out there super early. That's usually a pretty good, first thing in the morning is pretty good time to fish later in the evening. So especially at the regulating reservoir, there's a few locals that no matter what time you roll up, they're already going to be parked there. So, and the thing with the salmon again is they move around. So even if you do really well 1 or 2 days in a certain spot, you're going to have to keep moving to try to find them. So you can get territorial, but most of the time you're going to have to move eventually to find a new spot.
I have lots of questions.
Okay.
I'll let Dave ask his first one.
I have a couple of things on there. I've been fairly fortunate. I go ultra cheap as compared to what you advertise there.
Yeah.
I don't buy those $5 poles and stuff. I just got me a stick and wrapped some line around it and tied a hook onto it. And I think I had it in the neighborhood of about $2 into them.
Yeah, can be really affordable.
And it's very slick on there. You just toss it on out about 5 feet away from the hole after you dumped your hook in. And I use the maggots also on it. And when you hit one, it just bounces around and grab it and pull it in on it. If the old man of the sea can drag in in a big one, I figure I could get about a 12-inch salmon through the hole and stuff on it.
That's great.
I borrowed we worked and stuff with the ice drills and stuff on there, so it was pretty easy to borrow one.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
take it on out on it. One of the things that you were mentioning, the ice around the edges. If the water body is fairly well regulated, say like overnight because of a dam or something on there, it will break away, and it is loose. No matter if you got a foot of ice, 1.5 feet of ice out, 15 feet away from the shore on there, that you can still go through there. On it. The other thing was the ice grips and stuff. They didn't make those things, at least that I know of, on it when I was working with them. So I found that a couple of Phillips screwdrivers, tie them on and off on there and hang them around your neck and stuff on there. It's handy on it if you go through.
For ice picks.
To get back on up, because if there's any water and you can't get your feet on something, that the chances of being able to get yourself up onto the ice is basically zip.
Yeah, there's no traction.
And I sort of had most of my experience was on running rivers and stuff. I measured them and stuff on there, so we had to go on out and drill all the way across the rivers, and that even there, that you can have some upwelling of water just like you do out at Spring Meadow in patches, even, and get some very thin ice, so you still have to go be very careful. Now I had ice bars that we used, and sort of a toss up on there whether to drag out some ice or some gasoline, and like you say, that an engine and on it and all that other stuff on out, that a lot of times an ice bar you could dig through about 8 inches on there just about as fast as you can drill them on it. And we had to do to measure a river and stuff on there, that you put about 20 holes minimum in on up to 30 across.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, on it, but you get to know the point being, as you go on out, you'd put the ice chisel out in front of you, and you can hear the ring, and that tells you really quick on it how deep it is, or thick it is, I should say.
Yeah, Yeah, most people would not be that knowledgeable about the running water as you got working out on them. So that's why I tell them to steer clear of the
Yeah.
running.
Oh yeah, no, it's I agree on it. And you get so that there was one of those pictures that looked like it was a sunnier day, and so you're melting some of the snow off into the puddles. You can't
Yeah.
tell which is which.
I know. Yeah.
And most people send the kids on out to check it out before they'll send their dog.
I know. Yeah. I know. It's spooky sometimes.
Sort of depends on which one you want to get rid of first.
Right. Yeah. Who's more
So is it easy to scare the fish through the ice? Like,
we tell groups, we have 50 kids out there. We try to tell them not to be screaming and yelling and stomping around and things like that. Just, that's gonna reach them eventually. Plus, we don't really want to listen to it either. So
good excuse.
yeah, I mean, like I said, we have groups of 50 kids out there being kids, and we still catch fish. So it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal.
But it's not as big of a deal as when the kids are splashing around in the summertime in the water.
No.
Okay. And you mentioned the pressure ridges. Is that kind of like when a mountain type thing forms with an earthquake?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the tectonic plate. Yeah, like if you think about it like that. And then you've got like this overhang, and then you might have some like more ice or running water, or not running, but open water that you can't really see unless you get up close. But yeah, that's kind of when they're those plates are meeting, and yeah, similar.
Okay. And I read somewhere in a book, and I don't know if it was true or not, and I don't even remember which way it went, but it was something about the sound. You mentioned the ice cracking. It was like, if you don't hear sound, it's actually a bad thing. You want to hear sound. Or it might have been I don't think it was the opposite after what you said, but
yeah, I feel like I've heard that too. I mean, it's really dependent on the temperature change, like what's going on with the temperature at that point. And so if it's dead freezing, like if it's real cold out, and I feel like I've been out on days like that, and it's quiet, just because again, their ice isn't doing much at that point. But I don't personally, I don't think that would mean it's unsafe. I mean, there's probably a lot of ice at that point. I don't know, Dave, do you have a thought on that?
No, not really, and stuff on it. That it's always the stuff on the lake. It always seems like there's a ping to it. It's not really a crack, but to me it always sounded like a ping, and it sort of shot through. On it. It would travel through, and I don't know. It's still, that always kind of made me a little nervous. I don't care if it was a foot thick or more and stuff on there, that you hear the stuff and it makes you take notice anyway.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing anything like that on rivers.
Yeah, no, that's not really something that you hear on a river.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I mean, I've been out on real quiet days, and again, I think it's just because there's not as much fluctuation with the temperature. But I couldn't think of a reason it wouldn't be safe if you didn't hear it's just not.
No, and I have to agree with you on it. I that if you got a foot of ice and stuff on there, or I done a test one time. There was layers of ice on a river and stuff on there, and I think the top layer was only about 1/8 of an inch thick, but there was water underneath of it, between that and the next layer on there. And it was surprising on there that as long as I didn't pick my foot up, I could sort of skate across it and it wouldn't break.
Wow.
But there was only about 6 inches down to the bottom. On it, so I wasn't worried if I went in on there.
Yeah.
My boots were higher than that stuff on it. But
yeah, so that's, I guess, my answer for that one.
Okay. And then I remember hearing that you'll find carp just lying about on Canyon Ferry Lake, just that fishermen have caught and then thrown on the ice because they're kind of a junk fish kind of thing. but I know I've seen some of those carp and they're huge. How do you dig 2 holes? Like, how do you make sure you have a big enough hole for your fish?
Yeah, so that's a great question. You want an auger first.
That's
You want to try to get an
optimistic,
auger
Maria.
that.
What was that, Michelle?
That's really optimistic. I need to dig a big hole because I'm going to catch a big fish.
Well, yeah, if you know you're going to target big fish, you definitely need a big hole. You can get all sizes, but yeah, I mean, you can punch a couple holes if you have a smaller auger just to get something bigger. But it's pretty amazing. You bring the fish up the right way, the size of a fish you can get out of a pretty small hole. Some of those carp, though, yeah, you'd probably have to have a pretty good size diameter to get them out of there. But yeah, some people have augers, some people have 4-inch augers. Just depends on what you know you're going to fish for, and you kind of need to be aware of that when you purchase an auger. If you know you're going to go for pike or carp or some of the bigger stuff, you probably want a little bigger drill size than if you know the perch. We use a 4 or 6-inch, and we can get perch and salmon out of it usually pretty okay.
Yeah, we used the 6-inch, I think was what we had on there, but we had to get a special auger. To measure and stuff, we used an 8-inch.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that there was Fish Wildlife there had a rule on how large that you could punch a hole in.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see what the regulations say. I'm not sure if we have a regulation on that. That's a good question. Let me see if I can look at it while we're talking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there was on there, and I couldn't remember if it was 6 or 8 inches on it. I know that one thing there, the doggone kid and stuff on there, when I took her on out, she wandered around until she stepped in the hole.
Yeah, you definitely have to be careful.
It's big enough to get her foot in there and get it all wet. That sort of ended the day.
Yep. I've been out with a coworker whose kiddo did the same thing. So yeah. That's what people with kids can be really terrified of. They're thinking their kid's going to fall through a hole or fall in a hole. Usually, I mean, from what I've seen, holes, they could get a leg through. Usually, I don't think they couldn't get their whole body through. But again, a leg goes in, a boot fills up with water, and you're done.
Well, just tie a rope to the kid, just in case.
Yeah, you can totally put a rope around them. Just looking at our regulations.
So those people that had the boat out on Spring Meadow, is there any chance they were trying to get to the open water and just fish like normal?
No, I think they were actually ice fishing in that picture. I think they were just planning on if they needed it, it was going to be there. It can go either way on Spring Meadow. I've seen people try to take a raft across the open water to get to the middle. That was the first time I think people take a raft with them, knowing that, and they may have been trying to get to the open water too, but it looked like they were actually fishing in that particular photo. Usually it's paddling across the open water to get to the ice in the middle, which is so dangerous.
I have seen one that used a canoe part of the stuff across, but kept it there just in case.
Yeah. So yeah, so this is the Western District fishing district I'm looking at right now. Maximum size of hole for ice fishing, 12 inches.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there's no size limit for a hole for spear fishing, but spear fishing you can only do in certain places. So, and then shelters, it looks like they might have something about shelters, but let me see if
you got to have it. You got to put your license number on it or something on it.
Yeah, if you're going to leave your shelter out on the lake, you have to have your ALS number, at least your ALS number. It looks like Central is also 12. So yeah, some people will leave it out all winter and or move it around out there a little bit. But my parents have a little ice fishing shed that even has a stove in it that they have to have their information on. And so Central is 12 inches. Then let me see what the Eastern District is. It's a crazy day of all of the gadgets and things they have nowadays for ice fishing. Some of my coworkers were getting into these things called, you know, they have tip ups to tip up a flag, you know,
Oh, yeah.
when a fish is on, but they got these things called jaw jackers, which basically set the hook for you when the fish hit it, and then it would pop like hard pop up so that it would set the hook and you would go reel in the fish. And I said, what, that's not fishing. Like
That's for when they get carried away drinking to stay warm and they're not paying attention to their line.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you can have multiple lines out with ice fishing. And so that's the thing, in certain places, you can have like 6 fishing poles out. And so you're trying to watch multiple poles. And with those jaw jackers, they like them because they can have 6 lines out and they're not going to, potentially they're not going to lose as many fish. So in the Eastern Fishing District, there is no size limit for a hole. And that's kind of, you know, where those pike and different things are at. So it just depends.
Yeah. Yeah, that yeah, because I sure thought that around here, because I'm starting to go back 20, 30 years. I really thought that 8 inches was as big as you could have there. But shoot, used to be able to get, you know, 12, 14-inch salmon through those holes and stuff on there. And, you know, that I know that a lot of people had those tip ups and, you know, so that they would set the hook, but it didn't, I didn't seem to have any trouble. You could sure tell when they hit stuff on it.
If you're paying attention, if you're there to fish, you don't have any problems.
Yeah.
I have a strange question. Have you ever tried your bibs in the water in the summer?
I haven't. I've thought about it just to test the flotation out, but I haven't actually done it. Yeah.
Because I would be afraid with the bibs that it would try to shove my head under and float my feet and lower half.
So they come up to like here on me. So there's flotation built in kind of the length of the body, not just in the bottom half. So that's again, some people will put the float coat on and the bibs too, but yeah, it's something I've actually thought about doing to really test how much flotation is in those bibs. You know, if you go through the ice, it's going to be a little different than being in a big open body of water, but I might actually do that and how it goes this summer, because I've been curious myself to test it out. I might do a video or something.
I know that I used for the hip waders and stuff that, you know, they always talked about tying them off.
Yeah, so they don't fill with water.
Try it on there, and your feet are up in the air and your head's underwater and stuff on there. That just didn't make any sense at all to me on there. And I know that this was back in the 60s. We went down to the river. There was a couple, 3 of us on there to try it, and just let them fill up, because then they'll pull right on off, and to heck with it, you know.
Yeah, that's usually wading or waders too. With fly fishing, they have a wading belt that's supposed to try to keep that from happening. But yeah, I mean, some of these bibs you get are US Coast Guard approved, so that means they've gone through extremely rigorous testing with the flotation that's included, but not all of them are. So and they're pretty specialized. Like there's only a few companies that make like the really hardcore. I think Striker is one of them. That's who makes mine. But and you can get different levels of inflation. You can get like really heavy ones if you're working in the Arctic on a boat, probably. But just for ice fishing around here, that's, and again, I only wear them if it's gonna be really cold, or maybe there's not as, you know, 6 inches or 7 inches, just again to make me feel better. But I wouldn't wear them out if I thought that I really, really had the potential to fall through, because then I just wouldn't be on the ice. So
I love hearing about those Eastern, like the villages that you said pop up. That would be something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If you ever want to see something cool, like Google ice fishing town. And it's unbelievable. Like they literally have like markets, and
you can't believe that. A bar on the ice.
They have like trailer houses on the ice. Yeah.
What'd you say, Michelle?
Like in Wisconsin and Minnesota, that's a big thing.
Yes.
Well, you read in like Farmer Boy or one of those, I think it was Farmer Boy, where they're going out on the ice and cutting like foot blocks of ice, and I don't know, for their ice house. They have to have a lot of ice out there, I guess.
Oh, they do. Yeah. I'm just gonna pull up let's see here. I mean, it's crazy too how popular it is out there. Let's see, where is this? Oh, and they have, contests and, fishing contests and just, it's a big deal. I mean, it's pretty popular in Montana, but like they take it to a whole nother level out there.
There's been a few ice fishing down at the south end of, down towards Townsend area there off and on. I guess last year it was canceled because of the COVID.
Yeah.
And,
We haven't had I mean, we've had
a couple
okay
times,
ice the last couple winters. It's been a little sketchy, like
Yeah.
you'd go, but it was hard to find enough ice, at least for us to want to do some classes in certain places. A weird experience I had, was it last winter? I think it was last winter. We were going to do a class in Bozeman, and they have like a kind of a community fishing pond. We went out the day before. There was 9 and 10 inches of ice. We fished it. It was great. And then it snowed really warm, and it snowed the night that we were there. And so we went out the next morning, and so there was a lot of heavy wet snow. It hadn't froze. And so my coworker and I were walking next to each other. And again, I always tell people, like, walk where someone's already walked. Well, he stepped in a hole that he couldn't see, and it hadn't frozen through. And he went through it because it was just warm enough that it hadn't frozen, and that wet snow had kind of degraded the ice around it. And so he fell through at his knees, standing right next to me, and I was on 10 inches of good ice. And we had to cancel the class because we could not see those holes because of that heavy wet snow. And we were not going to take any chances with the class participants. But that was one of the weirder experiences I've had. Again, you can never say it's 100% safe. He was fine. It was very shallow, and I was right there next to him and everything. But just a weird, freaky thing that happened because it wasn't cold enough to freeze, and we couldn't see those holes we drilled the day before.
that sort of reminds me of one time on the St. Mary's River, just in Canada, just across the border. I got there about 4:30 in the afternoon during the early spring. And I thought, I got all the gear out, and I said, the heck with it on there. I'm going to go back on into the motel and come out in the morning and chip my holes on out. I got out the next morning, and there wasn't a bit of ice on the river. It had broken on up and had gone on down. And the only ice that was around, and it was about 14, 16 inches,
Wow.
had been tossed up onto the sides of the river there, where it floated up and got dumped on out onto the banks and stuff on there.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, there is no way I would have known how and why and when that thing would have gone out and stuff on it. Maybe just a couple of holes would have done it. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know the dynamics of nature and what's going on. So yeah.
Well, I might feel a little safer going out on the ice to walk on it. I don't know if I could. I don't know. Spring Meadow still scares me. My parents used to take me out there occasionally, but
I would go to the regulating reservoir if I was you.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of people out fishing. We know that I'm safe if we're out there. You'd be welcome to tag along with the women's class I'm going to do this spring in February. You wouldn't have to stay or fish or anything. Like, if you just want to walk out there with us and walk back, you're welcome to do that.
that sounds good.
First one.
I've had people do that before. They're like, okay, that was enough for me. I'm going to go back. I'm like, that's fine. So
That's a nice idea that you let people do that, because
yes.
It's kind of nice to be able to, with others there and professionals, kind of overcome that fear.
Yeah. And there's, again, I'm not going to force anyone to try to overcome a phobia. That's not my job. But whatever comfort level you have, you're welcome to come with us and just see. I'd say, don't trust. I mean, so again, if you see like 50 people out ice fishing, the ice is probably pretty good. If you see a few people skating, I wouldn't trust them all the time. We have a lot of skaters around Helena that like to go out and really push those limits on what's safe and what's not. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. If you guys saw, we had someone went through and then thankfully another skater rescued them with some rope. But they really like to get out there as soon as they think they can. And I don't think it's usually safe sometimes when they're out there, but I sure wouldn't be out there ice fishing, but they're out.
Is it any safer when you're moving?
I mean, if all it takes is one bad spot and one thin,
And you're not moving.
you're going to go through it. Yeah, you're not going to be
moving.
going real fast.
Okay, I was
Going
just
straight
curious
down,
if maybe
so.
speed helped.
I mean, it's different. It's different than just sitting on one spot, but it's ice is ice. I mean, you're going to cover a lot more ground, so you're going to probably have a lot more probability of maybe finding some bad ice. So
One of the things I would suggest, especially with how windy it's been, and if we did have the ice, is some of those spikes for your boots and stuff. You get out there on it and try to buck the wind on it, and you can end on up farther backwards than what you do on it.
yeah, you could totally get blown across the lake.
Yeah.
Well, they do those ice sails, right? Those
Yeah.
boats that.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah, it doesn't take much because I mean it's straight across there on it.
Especially when there's no snow.
Yeah. Had a friend that ended on up getting blown on out there on it. And he ended up having to stay out there a couple, 3 hours on it, which he fished anyway on it. But the wind let the wind come slack off on there, and then he was able to get back.
Yeah.
But
I know you hear about ice shelters that people don't put down properly. They'll blow all the way across the lake with you in them sometimes.
How did they anchor those?
They have big, long, basically screws, and you can actually get for your drill, and you just drill them straight down through into the ice.
And I wondered if they just didn't dig a hole and toss, something in there on it, and have it freeze over.
Yeah, you could probably just put snow on them if you knew the wind wasn't going to be blowing. But around Helena, I like to have mine anchored.
Yeah, because it doesn't take too much.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, 5 mile an hour wind and stuff on there can move things pretty good.
It can wreak
one of the things that I noticed that out there at the north end of the valley at the lake out there, you got the electric wire, the lines going across there, the feed wires, about halfway on out. I don't know what it is, but it seems to, in my own mind, I thought, well, I think that there's a little of the magnetic forces that seems to drag the salmon out underneath that thing a lot more on it. Now, whether that's true or not, but I always done fairly well there.
Hey,
never caught a fish.
All the proof you need, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, we had that one time on there that I caught, and there was 3 of them I caught. We haven't been out there more than maybe an hour and a half or so on it, and just toss them on up, and they just flash freeze right onto the ice and stuff on there. And so I brought them back home and put them in the sink. I was going to clean them there, and had to go into the other room there for a minute. So the wife thought, well, she'd turn the water on. They came alive on it and splashed water clear up to the ceiling, just all over the place and stuff on it. She says, I thought they were dead.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
And that happen though? Like, does that happen more often where they
it depends on how long, I guess how long they were frozen or,
Well, they quit moving immediately. I mean, it was 20 below or so on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, on it. And it just, as soon as they hit the ice, that was it.
We usually hit them on the head.
Okay.
So, but I'm usually not out in 20 degree below weather. Fair weather.
Well, there wasn't
fair weather fishermen. As far as ice goes.
It's very enjoyable, and I encourage anybody to go on out and have a go at it.
Yeah, I do too.
It really is, and I have found that most of them are fairly nice.
Yeah.
They seem to be more nicer the farther away from shore you get.
Yeah, they're probably the ones that are a little more dedicated and
Yeah.
don't mind talking fish to anyone who will listen. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks, you guys. I think I'm back with you next month to talk about snowshoeing. So, I will. I'm trying to think of some more interactive stuff I can do. I would have loved to had you out on the ice today, but we don't have any. So,
There is no ice.
no ice. 60 some degrees today. But yeah, maybe hopefully if we have any snow in January, maybe I can even
We can
And I hate-
revisit.
somewhere or something before the class. So
I hate snowshoes and stuff on there man, those things would get heavy. Get snow
yeah.
on top of them and stuff on there. But
well,
they came on up, the Canadians and stuff that I worked with on there, that they were allowed to buy a little bit more expensive. We had the old ones that was leather and had been around, had the long tails and stuff on there, and they were about 4 foot long. Man.
I was gonna say I'm gonna blow your mind with the options that are today.
Yeah.
Sounds like a really fun talk. I'm looking forward to that.
Super light, super portable, just totally game changer. So
Okay,
I'll
well,
tell you
sounds
that.
good. Thank you, Sarah.
yeah, so we'll
thanks,
see
so
you
much,
guys
Sarah.
next month. Happy holidays.
Yeah, same with you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.